All right, making sure this works. Well, those of you who were here 2 presentations ago to see Clint Harbor, I'm the Lora he kept referring to. But I did just join the right-of-way division from the Fort Worth District. And when I was at the Fort Worth District, I was over the utilities section and was immersed in the challenging career of world of utilities. And so in our Fort Worth region, we actually do have TxDOT has a very good relationship with the utility companies in our areas, and especially the big ones. And so that's why I thought it would be a good idea to invite one of our good partners with Encore. Encore, we have a really great relationship with them. And so if we're going to talk about best practices in partnering, then we definitely need to
get the right presentation.
Yeah,
so we're working on that. Hey, let me introduce myself while we're waiting, and that'll kind of save a little bit of time, Kyle. So I am Roger Lindsey. Thank you, and we'll get right back on track in just a second. I'm a 30-year employee with Encore Electric Delivery. I'm here to share some tools and some information around best practices on how we can partner with you and how you can partner with other utilities around the state of Texas. I grew up, spent most of my career in the line construction and maintenance group. I've been a project manager. I've worked in our vegetation management group, currently serving a role as a manager of the distribution right-of-way and easement acquisition and property management group. Is that us? That's us, okay. So with that, let's get right back on track. So that's who I am, and we'll pick it right back up.
That's a great illustration of what you need to do with right-of-way and utilities. You have to be able to adapt because nothing ever goes as you would anticipate and plan and hope it would go. But that's okay. We'll get back on schedule. So like I said, Encore is a great partner, and I've noticed in working with them, we actually have a lot of similarities. We're both engaged in major development of our infrastructure, bettering people's lives with being able to travel everywhere, movement of people and goods, having electricity, and just having the conveniences of life that we enjoy in America. And we're also focused with construction and maintenance, our primary endeavors. And then another thing that we have in common is our emphasis on safety. Both at TxDOT and Encore, safety is a #1 priority, and we don't proceed forward in anything that we do without making sure we have a safe environment. As you all know, TxDOT is structured with our 25 districts across the state, and then we also have subcategories or sub-offices, a varying number of offices within those districts, depending on how big they are, and we're just a big organization with 12,000 employees. And as far as what we cover, again, we cover the whole state with over 80,000 lane miles of road to maintain. And of course, every day we're working on constructing new lane miles on existing roads and even creating new facility infrastructure as well.
And Encore, you guys, we're a third of the state of the Texas, and we have 413 cities, municipalities that we deal with, 90+ counties that we serve across the great state of Texas. And we are split up in a couple of arms from a transmission and distribution, very similar to state highway, moving the people, high voltage transmission. You get off into a farm road or something like that and get to your home is where the distribution piece rolls in. So about 100,000 miles of transmission distribution line across the state of Texas. We have 3,500 employees, 2.2 million poles. We serve a lot of our 10 million plus customers across the state of Texas. So we have a lot of touch points that are very similar to what your touch points are as well. And one of the things that we used to do a long, long time ago is we like to eat, right? And so everybody in this room probably has done some of the best negotiations over food. And we do the same thing. We like to partner with our utilities. We like to partner with TxDOT. And there are a lot of things that's taken place in the past where we may have shaken hands, and what we deal with today is some of the things that we did with the handshake back then. But from a best practice perspective, maybe that's not the best way we need to do our business. And so we look at spending time with our partners. We want to be that customer advocate. We want to be available to you, and we'll talk some more about that when we get to our main best practices.
So what we're going to talk about is we have 5 goals in partnering that we're going to talk about today. I won't read them right here because we're going to go through each one of those individually. So the first one is to communicate in advance. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list of what you do to communicate. Communication is something that's a constant, but a few examples are on our end to give relevant project lists to our partners. We focus a lot on those lists internally, having our LET lists and our UTP, you know, all the kind of list formation that we have about our projects. But we need to take that information and convey it to our partners and let them know, and focus on and point out the ones that are going to be big. Yeah, they're going to expect some FMs and what have you, but if you've got a major interstate project or an interchange or something that's going to be, you know, very, very big project for your district, we need to let them know so that they can ramp up themselves, because every time that they have to do a relocation for us, it's a mini project for them. They have to go through the same process that we do for our projects. And so when we do identify a project, get closer to or getting further along in that planning process that we do, we send out, we identify potential people that are going to be affected on our corridors that we're working on, and we send them out notice of proposed construction letters. And that's really the precursor to what Sharon talked about in the earlier segment of notice of required accommodation. Before we realize that we have a conflict and you're going to have to do something and move, we first let you know that we're coming. So this is a we're coming letter to try to get everybody that we know may be affected. Doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a conflict, but it's one way to communicate and keep them up to speed on what's going on. And then what we started doing in Fort Worth was having regularly scheduled a monthly utility meeting. Other districts have, some of them do them quarterly, others do monthly. Every district, depending on how it's set up and their partners, may have it varying. But this is an opportunity, it's not project specific, because we have plenty of meetings and project meetings, but this meeting is a communication opportunity. And so we will in Fort Worth, we will identify each month a topic. So when we started out, we had Buy America, because we just had some Buy America guidance came out. So we thought, oh, that's timely, let's talk about that. And then the next month, we talked about our project lists. And so that's what we have commenced to doing, to have that topic of the month. We keep the meetings to 1 hour, but we stay after and answer questions, and it's a way to have that communication to say, hey, here's what's going on with us.
And so some of the things that we've done just within our company, and I believe that there's some of these similarities that take place in some of the other electric utility companies. I can't really speak for the water, but we like to, whenever that takes place, we like to appoint one point of contact. We want to get somebody that you can know who the player is within our company, and then we want to know who the players are in your company. We want to know who the players are across the entire spectrum of the project. So identifying who those players are and making sure that we have them in the right place, as well as what Lora says about identifying the conflicts early. We have a history of the past where we may not wait, or we wait till right away about 3 or 4 months or maybe a month before the project is ready to go, and we tell our folks all the time, let's do that at the very beginning. It's first that we hear from Lora, first that we hear from TxDOT or anybody about a conflict, let's start talking about right away at that moment. Let's don't wait until the last minute. Let's get it way out in early detection, and we think that would help us be successful.
All right, the next thing is to listen to your stakeholders, and we have, depending on the context, it's going to identify what stakeholders we're talking about, but I'm talking about project stakeholders, both internally, who should be in a meeting. Should it be the design project manager? We should have somebody from right-of-way, somebody from utilities. You know, we should be communicating and coordinating and listening to those stakeholders about their concerns and their perspectives. So if you are talking to the utility companies and you know that right-of-way is going to be an issue, well, let's get some right-of-way people in there. I know we helped out on a project Encore with our title commitments and some of the research that we did, and we shared that information so that they, when they were getting replacement easements, would go ahead and have a lead on which property owners they should be contacting. And then understanding the perspectives of what the utility companies have to deal with. When Hurricane Harvey hit, we all know the impact that it was on our organization to go out and have our crews help. But same thing is happening with Encore and all these other companies to go rebuild the infrastructure affected. And similarly, even if we aren't affected in Texas, if there's a hurricane in Florida, sometimes the utility companies will have to, or Encore especially, has to a commitment, obligation with their industry to go to Florida to help out. So they may have some crews on one of our projects doing relocation, but they've got to pull them up and let them go because that is a heightened priority for them.
Absolutely. Mama used to say, any message worth anything is worth repeating, right? And so I tried in these 3 bullets just to help you understand that we got to listen, we got to communicate, and we've got to deliver. And so we really need to be cognizant of the things that happen within Encore, right? And so if we send mutual assistance crews to down south to Hurricane Harvey, or we send them to Florida, we're going to take them off of your project. We need to be in contact with you. We need to get that one point of contact back out to you and let you know, hey, there may be some delays here, which I know that may affect your schedule. How can we work through that? And so we start listening to your needs. We start communicating back and forth, total transparency in that, and then we try to deliver. We deliver the best that we can, and if we can't deliver, we make sure that we're going right back up the ladder and we're communicating, we're listening to what you need. So who are the players? And I think that's very important that you identify who that is. So anytime you have a project, we deal with them every day. We deal with the governmental folks. We deal with the single-family residential developers. We deal with environmental folks. You name it, pesticide, anybody that we get in our right-of-ways, we deal with those. But what happens is we lose sight of who that customer is. So who is the person, who is the one that is really reaching out to you with the conflicts? And so let's use TxDOT in this example. You're going to see here in just a moment example, and I heard the young man mention earlier NTE and the LBJ projects and those kind of things that took place up in the Metroplex. I had the opportunity to be the program manager for Encore, and some of you may have worked with me through that process for those big highway expansion projects that were taking place at the time over the last 5 years. And so I used this as an example, and Renee was there and Lora was there at the RWA conference back in August, and we talked about how many players are in a specific project. And we had one designer in Encore, and he had 50 business cards that he was talking to people on a daily basis throughout all of the companies. And so we lose sight of who that customer is, and it's real easy to do that.
So one of our other points is customer advocacy, and so like Roger said, you have to identify that customer, and you also have to identify that customer's needs. What is their need? And as Kyle and some other people have said earlier, you know, with right-of-way division, we've been focusing on our customer service, and we have a customer service statement, and that really leads into to have a positive experience. One thing you do is you prioritize that customer. They're not going to have a positive experience if you don't make them feel like what you're working on is a priority for you. And I know we're all juggling multiple things, but when in that moment with that customer, you got to prioritize what you're working on with them, and advocate for them. If they're having an issue, if you're dealing with your utility company and they're having an issue, you need to go to the project manager and convey it and try to work on solutions. That's what we're focused here on is problem solving and finding solutions to our many issues.
I talk about my family a lot, and we'll go into a restaurant, and my daughter will say, "Lighten up, Dad." Well, I deserve and I expect customer service, and I think that each one of you probably do as well. And so one of the things that we're trying to do as a best practice in the utility industry, especially Encore, is to make sure that we are serving you, serving that end-use customer, serving those folks, and being dedicated to that. We are a customer advocate company. We don't sell a product, we offer a product. And so what our utilities do for you is provide a life, a being, a well-being, however you want to phrase that. But since our product is not for sale, you have the option to take it or you have the option to not to take it. And sometimes when this gentleman a second ago was talking about eminent domain and stuff like that, our company can exercise that right as well, and sometimes we need to do that in order to get to an end means, right, and be successful. But being customer service oriented and being that customer advocate means that we really have to be focused, and we have to don't lose sight of who that customer is, even when we get into the complexity of our programs. And we have to be, our company is customer driven, right? And since we don't sell a product, we offer a product. We don't exist unless the customers need power. You guys don't exist unless the customers need highways, right? And so we've really got to partner together, but be customer focused and be that advocate, because they oftentimes don't really know what they want. And so if you're building a home and you're wanting to put your power underground, well, we can tell you the options, that the overhead is not going to cost you anything, but the underground may cost you $5,000. What do you want to do? And so we give the options, and that's where the advocacy comes in, where our customers may not know what all those options are.
Well, in creating a teaming environment, that's both a key to success internally when we're working together in our various sections, and then working externally as well. You got to set realistic expectations. We cannot go to our utility industry partners and say, we have a project that's letting December of this year and we need you to move because we found some conflicts. That's not a reasonable expectation or realistic expectation to only give them a couple of months to move. Again, like I said, when we ask a utility company to adjust for us, they have just created a mini project where they're going to have to have design, and they're going to have materials orders. They're going to be letting a project like we do. They don't call it let, but they use contractors to go out and do all that. So it's not as simple as them just going out and getting a shovel and just moving something over a few feet. We've got to align our goals. Again, our main goal at TxDOT is our infrastructure with our maintenance and our construction. Our main goal is not to move utilities. So similarly with Encore, they're out there to provide electricity. They're not out there to get out of our way when we have a project. So we have to align and come to a solution and a compromise on what we can do and what the expectations are as far as scheduling, the resources that we have, and take everything to come up with that solution. And then once we develop a plan of action on how we're going to go ahead and proceed in the project development, in the cooperation and coordination, we've got to demonstrate commitment. We've got to have that plan and go with it, and then be able to adapt when things don't work out the way your plan is. You got to be able to roll with it and find a way to just keep moving instead of just sitting there waiting for something to fall into place for you.
If you've read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, most of you in here may have read that book, but you'll recognize these bullets on the right side, and I think they're so apropos to our conversation. So you got to really identify who the players are, but not only knowing who the players are, do you have them in the right position for the project, and do they have the right knowledge to get you where you need to go to be successful? And then allow that to take you in the right direction. So what do we do in Encore? We've taken an opportunity where we move towards this teaming environment, and I'm going to use the North Tarrant Express CDA project when that was taking place about 4 or 5 years ago, or however long that was. Time flies when you're in right-of-way, right? So we identified that one point of contact. I was the management sponsor of that project. We also put a project manager that was oversight and contact, and that one point of contact with your developer, TxDOT, those folks, those other utilities. We were talking to AT&T and Verizon, very similar, like you guys were talking to AT&T and Verizon on that specific project. But we identified a right-of-way agent, an overhead and underground design personnel that was focused on those two pieces of the arm of that project. We also had a coordinator that was looking at the work delegation as it was coming out of design, and we worked with our field construction folks to make sure that we were trying to meet these schedules that you guys had. And so that teaming environment is very important, and we learned lessons in Encore and in the utility industry about this has worked, and this was successful. And so now when we have large projects that come through, we try to face those projects with this same type of teaming environment, and I think that would work really well with us.
And then lastly, we've got the consistency in process. And I hear from some of our utility partners about, oh, you've got 25 different districts, you do things 25 different ways, and maybe on a few things, but by and large, we have our processes that are fairly consistent, but it's better to keep them streamlined and keep that consistency because first of all, it avoids confusion because if you've got 25 different districts doing things 25 different ways, you're confused how are you going to do it this time? And then it promotes efficiency. You all know that if you do something once, that first time it's a struggle. You do it the second time, get a little better, a little faster. You do it 20 times, at some point you're becoming a pro. And so that's why the consistency helps to maximize that efficiency. And but I do say that there is a balance between consistency and flexibility. I never want to make really anything so rigid that there's not room to adapt whenever you encounter a situation that just doesn't fit in that box that you've created in your process, in your consistent process, because there's always going to be some outlier that you've got to fit in and be able to adapt.
Yeah, real fast. I'll close with this. So process versus practice, right? We have consistent process that we underlying, we have to follow these type of processes. But the practice between West Texas and East Texas and KRT, our Killeen, Round Rock, Temple District, and all the way up into Texoma and in the Metroplex can sometimes be different. And so how we complete those processes may be different in other areas, and I think that's good information to share with our partners to make sure that they understand and that we understand that you have so many districts across the state of Texas. So just in closing, you know, being a customer advocate, I think, is huge. We got to keep our customer focused. We've got to embrace that teaming environment. We need to be consistent in our process and really listen to our stakeholders. But if we can communicate in advance and we can put things out there and way before they're needed, I think that we can be successful together. And thank you for letting me be here, Laura.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you all.